the James Madison University in Harrisburg, Virginia, at which he drew national attention for his successful effort to have the Pledge of Allegiance recited prior to meetings of the Student Government Association. He graduated in 2001 with a Juris Doctor degree from Boston University School of Law. So he is an attorney, and he was a member of the Texas House of Representatives, representing District 15, which is part of the Dallas area. And he was also a member of the Texas Freedom Caucus, which is a legislative caucus in the state which aims to support liberty-minded grassroots Texans who want bold action to protect life, strengthen families, defend the U.S. and Texas Bill of Rights, restrain government, and revitalize personal and economic freedoms for the state of Texas. And in July, as you know, Chairman West stepped down, and Matt was chosen to be the new chairman for the Texas Republican Party. So, and I was going to say something else, but what was it? I don't know. Y'all, welcome, Matt.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hey, good seeing you, sir.
Drink here. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me out here. I greatly appreciate it. I figure I'll talk to you a little bit today about I guess where we are as a state, where we are as a country, a little bit of what RPT is doing, and sort of the vision we have over the next election cycle for RPT. And then I'd love to take some of your questions afterwards, because I think that's really, I want to talk about what you want to talk about, so I'll spend a lot of time with questions. How long do you want me to take up, by the way?
We try to break out of here by 8:15.
Yeah, not over there.
All right, so I'm going to talk twice as long as that, and maybe we'll get out by 10 now. I'm good.
We won't die at 8:15.
No, I'm not going to go that long at all. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to see so many of you here. As we all know, so many of us know, because politics has affected our everyday lives almost daily over the past year and a half, like it never has before. It was almost like before we were very interested in it, and it affected us when we paid our taxes, when we sent our kids to school, but otherwise we didn't think about it as much as we did over the past year and a half, where we pretty much woke up every morning wondering what the government was going to do to us next. And luckily, at least in Texas, that appears to be over, thankfully. Anyway, I'll take questions after. Just let me go. Sorry. So over the past year has been pretty tough for a lot of us, and politics has affected us more than ever before. And as we come upon the 2022 elections, we truly have two different worldviews. It's going to continue to affect us more and more as we go along. We have one side, effectively socialism. Democrats have become the socialist party in its mainstream. It's no longer a center-left party like it once was. And then on the other side, for the Republican Party, we truly have a party that is set on preserving the America we all love and grew up in for our children. And that's really what the election's about. It's about a very dark path for America that abandons everything that America's been in the past, versus preserving the future for our children of the America that we grew up in and gave us so much opportunity. And how have we been doing that so far? How are we doing as a state, as a country? Well, the Democrats have been having some pretty good wins, unfortunately. Not necessarily political wins, they've had some, but they've taken over every cultural institution in America. They've taken over the schools, they've taken over corporate America. They've taken over our universities. They've taken over art, music, movies. Virtually every institution in America has been taken over by socialists. except for politics. The political realm is still up for grabs, and this is where we can fight. This is where we can make our stand. And that's why it's so important that we do. This 2022 election, if we lose Texas, we lose the last bulwark we have in our country, because there'd be truly nothing left. That's why it's so important that we actually make a stand in politics. We have, I'll get to that. I'll ask you a question. That's why, that's why it's so important that we win this next election. And let's talk about what Democrats believe and what they're taking. We're talking about critical race theory in schools, where they teach our children in public schools funded by your tax dollars to be racist. We're talking about open borders, where they bring in hundreds of thousands of Democrat voters into our states who are going to vote, even though they're not citizens, of course, because they oppose election integrity laws. We are talking about COVID fascism, where if Democrats controlled this state today, it might look something more like Australia, where people even now are being locked in their homes by military, allowed to leave 2 hours a day, and not allowed to travel more than 2.5 miles from their home. There was a scene of a wall that was built between states in Australia where loved ones on Father's Day were meeting at the wall so that they could see their fathers. All because of a virus with a fatality rate of under 1%. It's horrifying, but it could come here if we don't make our stand, and that's why it's so important. So how are we doing in Texas? Well, we're doing better than elsewhere, I could say, but there's still more to be done. Sort of like saying, we had some huge victories this past legislative session. To be honest, I think together with the two special sessions where we look at the accomplishments of the last legislative session, I do believe that it surpasses our 2017 session, which I think was the best session we've had in recent memory. Should you be satisfied? No, we should never be satisfied. We're in a war. We need to win the war. And we should be happy that we won some battles, but don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Because the Democrats have made a lot of gains these past couple of years as well. But we have some big victories to point to, and I think we have to acknowledge them. Like the heartbeat bill, which has had a real effect in preventing the killing of unborn life in the state of Texas. Constitutional carry, which is a bill that we've been trying to get passed for years. And when I was in the legislature, I can tell you, nobody thought it was even possible to pass that bill. But it was because of grassroots efforts like yours that it actually was passed. We passed other priorities as well, like an election integrity bill. That was a strong election integrity bill. I was very happy with the election integrity bill that was passed. When Democrats left at the end of the first special session, the election integrity bill that they killed was not as strong as the bill that was ultimately passed. So, it's very interesting because if it was that bill that ended up getting signed into law, I would not have been happy. I'm very happy with this bill. Representative Murr did a great job in taking that bill over the finish line. He truly did. And he did a great job of getting amendments and in handling the conference committee. Because the bill we got was so much stronger than the one they killed originally. So leave it to Democrats. We sometimes aren't satisfied with Republicans because we make mistakes and do some things that are a little off. But you know what? Democrats killed an election integrity bill that wasn't nearly as bad for them as the one that was passed. So God bless Democrats for that. There's also, so what did we pass? We passed heartbeat bill. Oh yeah, religious liberty legislation was the other legislative priority from RPT that we did have something passed for. We prevented churches from ever being shut down in the state of Texas again. Passed legislation. Arguably, it's a constitutional issue, and the courts would have prevented it anyway. But it's good to have that legislative backup. So constitutional carry, heartbeat bill. religious liberty legislation, election integrity legislation. Those are 4 of the 8 Republican legislative priorities this session. More than we expected. I think it was a pretty good haul, but there's still more to do, truly. We have other legislative priorities in the Republican Party, such as protecting monuments, such as banning taxpayer-funded lobbying, and the monument protection was passed by the Senate a couple sessions ago. Banning taxpayer-funded lobbying was also passed by the Senate, I believe it was last session. And our other 2 priorities as well, banning child gender modification, again, passed by the Senate as well, but not in the House. So we still have some more to get over the finish line. We hope they'll be added to the special session, this 3rd special session, which starts on September 20th. And we, of course, as the Republican Party of Texas, will be encouraging what hasn't been added to the call yet to be added to the call. And, of course, we'll be encouraging the legislature to get those bills over the finish line. Lastly, you've also seen, you obviously heard about the Democrats fleeing, absolutely shameful, fleeing the state of Texas to prevent election integrity legislation from being passed. That's just the latest act of a Democratic Party that is more and more extreme by the day. At the Republican Party of Texas, we passed a resolution unanimously at the last meeting. The SREC passed a resolution, Stephen Stanley and the other members. We have 62 SREC members, plus the vice chair and chair. 2 were absent without proxies. 62-0, we passed a resolution encouraging the House to remove from their committee chairmanship positions those Democrats that fled to prevent election integrity. So they have not been removed. We, of course, hope in the 3rd special session that the House will remove those Democrat chairs. It's absolutely inexcusable that we have those Democrat chairs in the House. Over the next year and a half as well, I think the Texas House needs to re-examine the practice of shared leadership. We have a war going on. We have a war going on electorally. We have one going on in our culture, where Democrats are becoming increasingly extreme. It's absolutely inexcusable that Republicans, who have won every statewide office since 1994, both houses of the legislature since 2003, would share power when voters consistently have indicated that they want Republicans controlling the state. Other states don't do this. It's very rare. It's certainly rare to have 14 of 34 committee chairs in a chamber be the out-of-power party. Might have made sense one day in the days of blue dog Democrats. Doesn't make sense anymore because these Democrat chairs are not blue dog Democrats. I'll give you an example. Chris Turner, Democrat chair of the Business and Industry Committee, has accused Ken Paxton of sedition by bringing election lawsuits challenging the results of elections in Georgia and other states. Raphael and Shia, Joe Moody, Raphael and Shia, I forgot what his chair of. Joe Moody was the president pro tem before he was removed by the speaker. Said that if you support strong legislation prohibiting illegal immigration, you are directly responsible for the deaths of all of those El Pasoans that got shot at Walmart. Because you foster hate. And he specifically named Ted Cruz and our other Republican elected officials. He's appointed to a position of power. We cannot share positions of power with people who hate us and say that they think we're criminals. And we shouldn't do it anymore, and this should be the last session we do it.
That's right.
So, what do we do? Where do we go from here? Well, the Republican Party of Texas right now is putting in place an infrastructure to allow us to strongly come into the 2022 elections. We are putting in place election day operations along with a legal team that will be able to rapidly respond to any instances of voter fraud and any irregularities in the elections. We are putting together, working with and training county chairs as well to be able to fill election judge spots, to be able to fill precinct chair spots. Effectively, we're trying to start early to build the grassroots army. It's going to take us to victory in the 2022 elections. Of course, we're putting on a convention, which is going to take place next June 13th to the 18th, where it's going to be the official kickoff to the general election, where I can tell you it's going to come after redistricting. As Texans, we're going to win, and we're going to win big, because Biden is overreached. He's overreached severely in terms of botching the Afghanistan withdrawal, which is absolutely criminal. In terms of inflation, that's running out of control because we shut down America and paid people not to work and continue to do so. This is the only time in America, it's the only time in my lifetime in American history that I can think of where there's actually been simultaneously high unemployment and a worker shortage at the same time. It reminds you of the stagflation of the 70s. Together with the weak foreign policy and the weak president, in fact, it's even worse because there's much worse music now. The 70s were much better music. But, you know, we're in a position where I think we can gain 10 House seats. I think, hopefully we can gain a Senate seat. I think we can increase our congressional delegation. I can tell you I'm fairly positive we're going to win Congress, and I think we're going to win the Senate as well. And we're not going to do it without you guys, because we need you guys not only to work as election judges, not only to work on the ground, but in everything you do. I mean, your churches, your community groups. We need to evangelize what the Republican Party stands for. We need to evangelize liberty to other people. Because there's a lot of people out there who have never been involved in politics, don't want to listen to politics, but they know you. They might know you're being apolitical. They may know you're Republicans. If you talk to them about things they care about, like family, like America, like opportunity, like values, that's important. You're our emissary. Evangelize liberty the same way that Democrats evangelize government. And they do it in everything they do, and they don't. So please go out and do that over the next year. Please support the Republican Party of Texas. Troy has a code that you can donate financially, or if you want to donate your time, please see your new county chair once he's chosen, and volunteer to be a precinct chair, to be an election judge, to work on the ground. We need your help. Thank you. I appreciate it, and I'm always here to answer any of your questions or any of your concerns. So does anybody have any questions? I'd love to. Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with the situation with the North Carolina body?
Very, I'm in healthcare.
Centers? Okay. I heard Kentucky confirmed today that they're reducing the
Yes.
shipments to Florida and Texas.
Correct.
What can we do?
I've already started working on it. So I'm a healthcare lawyer. We company I'm general counsel for represents about I think we figured out like 3 or 4% of the infusions in the state of Texas. And yeah, we got a notice saying that they're reducing monoclonal antibody treatment. So effectively what they're doing is earlier in April, the Northeast had an outbreak. So all of the higher vaccinated states had the biggest COVID outbreaks. We didn't hear anything about that. But now, because of seasonality, we're having outbreaks, and 70% of the cases are in Florida or Texas. Now suddenly there's a problem with directing 70% of the treatments to Florida and Texas during this time. So what the federal government said, and they put this out on the CDC website, was we're going, due to the disproportionate use by unvaccinated states of treatments for COVID, they are going to reallocate treatments more based on population to preserve the future need for blue states that aren't currently having an outbreak. So for the first time, you were for the last year able to get monoclonal antibodies, which is the best treatment for COVID currently in place, on demand. And it's a lifesaver. I mean, it reduces hospitalizations by 80 to 85%. It is a true lifesaver. It's what Trump got when he got COVID. It's what Greg Abbott got when he got COVID. And it's truly a lifesaver. And the government's keeping you from this life-saving treatment and restricting it to our state. Think about it. If we put an embargo on a country of life-saving treatment, that would be an act of war. But our own government is doing it to our state. I mean, you can't say it's because of how we voted, but is it? I mean, truly. So I actually talked with the lieutenant governor about this today, earlier this afternoon, and he was very interested in it. What we can do as states is we can purchase monoclonal antibody treatments. Regeneron, which is the largest, has a federal contract. We are not able to purchase that. However, there are other treatments available that are just as good that don't have federal contracts. Like there's 4 other treatments, and 3 of them are early COVID treatments. One's a late COVID treatment. So we can contract and purchase them ourselves. The problem is if the government doesn't purchase them, they're $2,000 a dose. And there's no guarantee that insurance is going to cover it. So individual providers might be hesitant to make that outlay ahead of time. I mean, think of it, you're talking 40 doses is $80,000, and 40 people with COVID is what you may see in a week. So if you're a small provider, you're not going to do that. Hopefully we can find a way in our budget and special session to make that purchase as a state to ensure that you can get treatment you need on demand. Yes.
Thanks for coming, first of all.
Sure.
You talked about the Democrat, the chairman of the committees in the House,
Mhm.
and at the beginning of the regular session, the rep from my home district, Brian Slayton, and he introduced the bill.
Amendment to the rules.
It was an amendment, okay, and I think he got a grand total of 5 Republican votes. Is there any way something like that's going to come up again? A vote. I know you talked earlier about the resolution you guys passed, but is there a chance to get rid of some of these guys legislatively?
There's two ways to do it. So there's 2 issues here, right? There's whether you should punish the Democrats who left, and there's whether you should have Democrats going forward. Sure. 2 different issues. Slayton's dealt with, should you put it in the rules, a system like the U.S. Congress has, where the majority party controls, you have ranking members from the minority party, but the majority party controls all the leadership positions. The second issue is whether or not we should punish the Democrats who left by removing their committee chairmanships. So that can be done by resolution while they're in session.
You can't.
Cody Vasut proposed an amendment which we came out in support of along with the SREC as well, which would have provided a mechanism for removing Democrats who fled their duties and automatically remove their seniority if they violated a call of the House. I think it was for 2 or 3 days. That was a good bill. I mean, those are the 2 things that they value, right? There's seniority and their committee chairmanships. But do something. I mean, people across the country are watching. And the Democrats got away with it. We passed the election bill, and no, we can't forget about it. They wouldn't forget about it if it was us.
Will the speaker, pardon me, will the speaker, is he a liability or an asset on something like this?
I mean, I don't know. I advocate for a position and hope it gets done. And I would encourage you to call and advocate it gets done too. I mean, if he does it, he's going to be the hero of Texas.
Oh, so if they can get away with it, they can keep doing it, then remember the killer diesel like a few years ago. They do it every time, they can't win the vote.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, do you have any updates on auditing the 2020 election?
Any updates on what?
auditing the last election?
Yeah, we're gonna have, the 2020 election, we're not gonna have an audit of. There was no bill passed on that. By the time you do it, it's gonna be the 2022 election. You're not gonna replace anybody, so it's only gonna be for posterity. With the election bill that was passed, there was an amendment on it that provides for auditing two counties of over 200,000 people. I want to get it right. And 2 counties of under 200,000 people. It does not limit it to 2. It just says you'll do at least 2. And I think the governor's going to appoint a Secretary of State that's going to take a hard line on election integrity. I certainly hope that's the case.
Yeah.
And with that tool in his toolbox, I think you're going to see audits of the counties you want to see audited. And if there's widespread fraud in the upcoming election, we're going to find it. Yes, sir.
As far as election integrity is concerned, and audits are concerned, it's nice to have audits when it's appropriate. However, unless we're going to start penalizing people that are illegally voting,
Right.
the audits really going an awful lot.
Well, if you do, I mean, you have.
Penalties, and they have to be imposed.
Oh, exactly. And the Attorney General, I believe he's prosecuted 500 voter fraud cases. And the new election bill also provides for increased penalties in many places. Provides for a decreased penalty in one place that kind of slipped by, but we hope that that'll be remedied during special session. But in general, provides increased penalties for voter fraud, makes it easier to prosecute voter fraud, and broadens the scope of what is voter fraud. It's a good bill that makes it easier for the Attorney General to prosecute cases. I think you'll see the effects of it.
I have a statement.
Can you phrase it in the form of a
I've been
question?
Republican for as long as I can remember. And my problem right now is, one, I don't give money to the parties because I don't like the way they spend it. They give it to rhinos. And the majority of the Republican elected officials, I would put in the rhino category. I find somebody that I like, I vet them, I give money to that person, just directly to their campaign. And if they turn out to be a dud, I cut them off. The thing is, we put Republicans in charge, and they do nothing. And I mean, they absolutely do nothing. They don't have a spine among most of them. I can name off the 2 or 3 right here in the state of Texas that have a spine to stand up and do what is right.
Okay. So what's the question?
It's not a question, it's a statement.
Listen, okay, I go. Would you like me to answer your statement? I can do that.
Well,
I'll let you off the hook by starting to answer.
let me finish up.
Okay.
We go to conventions, we put out all of this material for what we want done, then they get behind closed doors either in Austin or in Washington, and then they decide to do what they want to do.
Okay.
And if we had a third party, I'd be gone right now.
Okay. So, yeah, and then
This is
That would
like
be
the first
irrelevant.
time that we've actually
So-
legislated priorities to do something.
right, exactly. So that's my point. So the whole point of the RNC, or not the RNC, I'm sorry, the RPT, having legislative priorities and having a legislative priority committee is to actually give you guys the facts on the ground of what's happening with the issues that you as delegates chose to be the 8 issues you focus in whatever the upcoming special session is. So that's what I've done as chair is, my goal is as chair, and I know it's been the goal of chairs before me as well, is to not just make the Republican Party a cheerleading society for Republican officers. And clearly not. The Republican Party of Texas operated differently than many other state parties and the national party as well, in that we set our sights on victory in November. And that's important. Victory in November. But everybody does that. But it's important to turn those electoral victories into policy victories as well. And that's part of the reason why the SRAC elected is because I've experienced doing that. I served in the House for 4 years. I was ranked at Rice University as the most conservative member for my first term and the second most conservative member my second term. I don't think anyone has come out of the House with more conservative bona fides than I have, certainly other than Stickland, my good friend. And now I'm in charge of the party as well, tasked with on behalf of the SRAC promoting the legislative priorities and trying to get them over the finish line. So I do hope, I can tell you I share your frustration at the rate at
I
which.
mean, and also this year,
Let me finish.
they
Let me finish answering your question. So I share your frustration with the rate at which electoral victories are turned into policy victories. I fought that for 4 years. And you got to understand that Austin is the structure of Austin favors the status quo. And the only way you change the status quo as a rep, as a party, as a citizen, is to create friction in a positive way. And I'm not talking about just lobbing bombs indiscriminately or doing that. I'm talking about creating friction strategically to get things over the finish line. And the perfect example of that is constitutional carry. Because nobody at the beginning of the session thought constitutional carry was going to pass, and I don't even know if the majority of people wanted it to pass. But it passed, because you guys worked hard, and you created positive friction that brought it over the finish line. And we did, and that was a Republican victory. We acknowledge it. So, yeah.
I believe that we control the party. We don't need to leave the party. We need to get our candidates better and put our work more effectively.
You do. You control the party.
We do. And I mean, the structure, we've got it, the finances basically sorted.
You set the rules.
Yeah.
You elect your SRAC members. Your SRAC members are effectively the board of directors of the company. I'm the CEO. I was appointed by the SRAC, but I would be elected by the delegates of the convention, the next convention. It's truly a grassroots organization. And a majority of the grassroots are conservative.
I think that's nationwide. See, I think nationwide, our people are out there. Look at how they turn out. They're out there. And we've got people out with school board meetings, and fighting.
I'm trying my best to be your voice. So love to hear from you, but that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to get, the mission of the party isn't just to elect Republican officials. It's to get conservative priorities passed into law and to build the infrastructure that wins the elections that makes that possible. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Since you're saying that you're the CEO, in essence, that,
Effectively.
can you identify those particular Republicans, like you say, spineless and useless, but they're Republicans?
I'm sure he knows.
You question.
Well, okay. Hold on.
Correct. Get
Let me
those
see.
things out.
I've just identified them in my head. But I'm not going to tell you what they are. Because
There's got to be some way to push them out. Get the CEO.
here's the deal. Listen, you can, I'm going to tell you a time I was wrong, okay? I'm going to tell you a time I was wrong, because 10 years ago, I was focused on replacing Republicans in primaries. And I beat a Republican who was an incumbent in a primary.
Well, I'm a Republican too.
I did, but I'm saying I beat an incumbent in a primary, and we thought if we got enough people in there, things would completely change. Well, no, because people respond to the incentives of the organization that they're in the area. Same thing with Congress. You can call it the swamp, you can call it whatever. What we have to do is find Republicans who are conservative in primaries vote for your preference in the primary. But don't think that's the only goal. Your goal should be, and Milton Friedman always had the best way to put this. Milton Friedman said, your goal shouldn't be to put the right people in office, it should be to make the wrong people do the right things. And that should be your goal. Really. You are the voters. I can tell you every single person in the legislature knows anyone in their district who influences 20 to 50 people. They know who they are. Because I can tell you, they would talk about them when issues would come up. They would say, oh God, Betty from my district just texted me on this. And they would look at, you guys matter, okay? You do. And yes, work your primary candidate of choice, give them money, do that. But also, don't let up there. Make the wrong people do the right thing. So when your candidate loses, stay on it. And keep working those issues. I guarantee you can make a difference. Anything else?
Is that it?
Yep. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.